Hello loves, my name is Maya and welcome to my canvas. Today we're discussing one of my top favorite female anime protagonists. She's quirky, cute, full of ambition, and with a pinch of revenge. Please welcome one of my top girls, Kyoko Mogami. Today, I'll be drawing some long overdue fan art of her while talking about her character in the anime called Speedpaint. Now, disclaimer, I will be talking about the premise of the show and will not go too deep into spoilers. So if you're interested in watching the anime for yourself and seeing the drama unfold, I'll not include in-depth drama that happens in the anime, but the all-round issues and challenges that Kyoko goes through and side characters. I also apologize in advance if I mispronounce any names. But with that being said, let's get to the drama. Literally. What is Speedpaint about? Speedpaint is about Kyoko Mogami, a young girl who was brought to Tokyo by her first love interest, Sho. Sho and Kyoko are childhood friends whose families were extremely close. But one day, Sho has a dream of becoming a star, and he does not want to run his family business. So, he asks our cute, lovable Kyoko to accompany him to Tokyo to help him achieve his goal. Kyoko quickly agrees, and they move together to Tokyo. However, while Sho pursues his dream, Kyoko is stuck working as his personal maid. Yes, a literal maid. She is found working multiple jobs at the same time to cover bills, food, and other expenses required for Sho to be a star. And Sho takes full advantage of her blinding kindness. He even forces her to rent an expensive apartment so he can appear to be like a celebrity. On top of that, he never wants her to acknowledge him publicly. However, our sweet little Kyoko is blind to it all because she believes in his dream and wants to see her childhood bestie / love interest succeed. So she puts up with everything just to make him happy, and I mean everything. She would run home from her multiple jobs to cook Sho fresh food. She would even go as far as using the spending money to buy merch of him to show her undying support for Sho. And that's just wild to me. But soon enough, she discovers Sho's true feelings about her. Days later, she plans to meet Sho at his agency's office and overhears him complaining about her to his manager and even mentions how naive she is to comply with his every request. Now, after hearing the main antagonist say things like this, most female protagonists would probably start crying and flee. But Kyoko is the exact opposite. She is enraged. She rushes out to tell him that she will bring him down as a star one day and swears to exact her revenge on him. And what better way to get revenge on a star than to audition at his agency's rival, LME, which is short for Laurie's Majestic Entertainment. And this agency just so happens to house Ren Suraga, his main rival and Tokyo's most popular star. The revenge plan. After being humiliated by Sho, she sets out to change her appearance and create a completely new identity for herself. She used the money she would normally use to spend on Sho to change her hair, buy herself makeup, and a new set of clothes. Things she gave up to help someone else rather than to treat herself. To get back at Sho, her next step was to be accepted as an LME talent. However, getting an audition was more difficult than she had anticipated. After days, and I mean days, of convincing one of the LME talent agents to give her a chance, she finally gets in. However, instead of seeing her as an immediate talent, the president, Lori Takurata, saw potential in her and invited her to join his new training program called the Love Me section. You'll also see here in the fan art that I'm drawing of Kyoko is her Love Me section outfit, and it's kind of unseemly. It is a highlighter pink jumpsuit with a Love Me sticker flash in the back and on the front of the jumpsuit, and you just can't miss it. The Love Me section is a new section of the agency dedicated to talent who lack love in something, and Kyoko lacked love and romance during her first audition with LME. But can you really blame her? Her low-key childhood sweetheart ripped her heart out only just a few days ago. And unfortunately, the trauma is reflecting in her acting skills. And in Takurata's eyes, her acting was coming off as hate rather than love. After some consideration, Kyoko accepts his offer. She knew that in order to be in the same field as Sho, she needed to take every step possible to get closer to her revenge. Kyoko had never received proper training in the arts of singing, dancing, and acting, so the Love Me section allowed her to work on small projects to gain experience and practice. In my opinion, it was kind of a win-win situation, especially if you're coming into something that's completely new territory for you, and especially in the entertainment space, because usually most people that get into the entertainment space, they've been training since they were toddlers, and in Kyoko's case, that was just not a thing for her. So in a way, when I was watching this, as kind of embarrassing as it was to be part of the Love Me section, I kind of agreed with the tactics of her joining, because at least they didn't deny her, and even though she didn't technically get in, she's still part of the agency in a way. However, there is one annoying catch. Anyone in the agency who requests her help is given an Love Me stamp. To be rewarded with a debut at the LME agency, she must earn a certain number of points from people in the agency who assign her jobs. And it can be a good or a bad thing. If she accepts a job and does really well, she'll get high points. But if she doesn't do such a great job, she'll get low points. But that's where the drama comes in, because with some of the requests that she's given, some of them don't really give her points fairly, and they really make Kyoko work for it. And that's kind of where a lot of the drama kind of starts setting in, because she has some haters in the chat that kind of don't want to see her succeed, so she has to pull an arm and a leg to prove to them, to get the points. But then you get some ones that are very grateful of Kyoko's work and her help, and they graciously give her points. But it doesn't come easy at all. But I'll stop there for now, so I don't spoil too much about how that goes. But let's just say that these side quest jobs are putting it in her life. And on the opposite end, she's definitely putting on a show in return. The male protagonist. Our male protagonist is Ren Tsuruga. He's a young, handsome actor who has made a big name for himself in Tokyo. He's always getting booked back to back for acting and modeling jobs, and he's also LME's top talent. He's very business forward and takes every job very seriously. However, he appears to be taking his jobs a little too seriously, to the point where the president sits him down and informs him that he hasn't been putting out his best work lately. The president then tells him that he literally needs to get his act together, or he'll be benched until further notice. This takes a toll on Ren because he believes he's doing his best work, but there's obviously some drama and some issues that is holding him back. But amazing new talent is emerging and debuting all over Tokyo, and he realizes that if he doesn't get back into the swing of things, he will eventually be overshadowed. Now, the funny part now begins with his relationship with Kyoko, which is not as romantic as you might expect. From the beginning, Kyoko was conditioned to despise Ren for show's sake because he was his rival. However, now that she is working on Ren's side, she is unsure on how to feel about him. She admires his talent and looks up to him, but her and Ren do not see eye to eye on her motive of becoming a star. After some time, Ren is discovered to be a distant admirer of her talent, but he quickly learns that she is pursuing fame in order to exact revenge on Sho. As previously stated, Ren is serious about his acting career, and when he discovered her true goal, he became annoyed and even disappointed with her actions. I too grew up as a theater kid and a choir girl and sang in choirs from elementary school all the way up until college. I participated in and won a variety of competitions, so I understand Ren's perspective. If I were in his shoes and I had spent years honing in my craft with people who take it seriously, I would be a little annoyed too if someone new appeared out of nowhere just to be there for revenge. However, as a watcher of this story, I still feel for Kyoko. Sho took precious young years of her life and left her hometown to pursue his dream. And while I was watching, I still found myself rooting for her to succeed and show that she does not need him to find meaning in her life. Now, the anime goes into greater detail about her own family issues as a child, but let's just say she was traumatized by people in her life neglecting her. And at this point in her life, she had to push herself to become her own person. So in this story, Kyoko must not only prove to the agency that she is talented enough to be there, deal with Ren's criticism of her actions, and pretty much start her whole life over. The side characters. Along the way to her debut, she encounters a few humorous and quirky people who either make her journey easier or more challenging, with the first one being Kanae Katanami, the second member of the Love Me section. You meet her first during Kyoko's audition for LME, and she is well known for her incredible talent, to the point where accepting her as an LME talent would have been a no-brainer. And that's the case at first. However, Takurata agents notice that she lacks love in her acting as well, and it is later found to be the second member of the Love Me section and Kyoko's partner in crime. At first, she hardly acknowledges Kyoko's talent and presumes to tell Kyoko how much better she is than her. However, over time, Kyoko sees her as a best friend that she's never had. And over time, Kanae does her best to support her during their time together in the Love Me section. And for another notable side character, it would be Yukihito Yashihiro. He is Ren's manager, and he plays an important role in the story's romantic plot. After spending time with both Ren and Kyoko, he notices a little bit of a spark between them and becomes the fly in Ren's ear, encouraging him to pursue something with Kyoko, or even at the very least, be nice to her while she is trying to do her best at LME. He's basically Kyoko's secret cheerleader, trying to support her from the sidelines to help her impress Ren behind his back. I think his character is amusing. It is fun to see a supporting character like him enjoy pushing the lovebirds together. The romance. Alright, now for the side dish to this main course, the romance. let me just start by saying that there is an age gap of about 4-ish years between Kyoko and Ren, with Kyoko being about 16 and Ren being about 20 at the start of the anime and manga. Now, for once, the anime is completely aware of the age gap and acknowledges it in the story, which, if you're a longtime anime romance fan like me, you know there are many stories out there that are blind, okay, to the age gaps that they try to sneak in. But this anime is a little bit different. The story is primarily about Kyoko's vengeance, with only a few romantic interactions between her and Ren. Ren even admits to Yukihiko, his manager, that the age difference bothers him, and he boldly states that she is too young and he's not that interested. Ren honestly just focuses on his career, and that's kind of like the main thing for him for a majority of the story, with, like I mentioned before, hints of romantic interest ever so often. When I first watched this anime, I was also in high school, so I was around the same age as Kyoko at this time. So seeing this dynamic, it was kind of interesting for me, to say the least. And it was interesting to see an anime take age seriously to a certain extent, let alone include it in the story. Because like I mentioned before, I've watched so many romance anime where we as the viewer know that the age is a little questionable, but the story acts like it's not a thing. They tell us the age, or we can kind of guesstimate of she looks a little younger than him, or vice versa. But this was the first time for me where an anime story actually pinpoints it out, and you actually see the point of view of the other, of how they feel about that. So I thought that was kind of interesting. I've never saw that before in an anime. Ren was actually mature enough to keep his distance from Kyoko in that way, at least in the anime. Of course, everyone has an opinion on age gaps, but I personally feel like it's unfortunate that most romance anime focus on young girls and older men. That's a whole nother topic in itself, but that's just my opinion on that. Now, obviously, not all romance anime do this, but there are many more than I care to count that do. But in the end, I like how Skip Beat in particular does not draw too much attention to it. And here's a little tidbit about the continuation of the romance in the manga. Now, if you don't want to hear about it, you can skip forward to the next chapter of the video. Now, in the manga, they do eventually both confess their love for each other, and that's after about a year or so of working side by side. Kyoko at that time would be about 17 years old, and Ren would be about 21. However, they both decide to focus on their professional goals for a while before attempting to pursue any kind of relationship. And the romance pretty much ends there for the time being, as my Google searches show that the manga is still ongoing. Now, if I had anything negative to say about Skip Beat, honestly, the main point I would bring up is the age gap. I feel like with the story, it really is not needed, because in a way, Kyoko and Sho, they already technically moved out of their hometown. They weren't going to school, so, which is also another dramatic issue for Kyoko, but they were already kind of doing adult things. Kyoko was already working, jobs. She already kind of had her own place, and she was kind of doing, starting a career. And even with Sho, mind you, Kyoko was being like a handmaid for him, but in a way, the story really could have went without that age gap. Kyoko could have easily have been in her 20s or early 20s in this anime, because, like I said, she doesn't really focus on school too much. School is brought up, about her going back to school and pretty much, continuing her life. But in my opinion, I really didn't think it was necessary for her to have this age gap when it came to Ren. But like I mentioned before, age gaps in anime, that's just a whole topic in itself. But that's pretty much the only pinpoint that was kind of like a thing I just felt like was just not necessary for this story. But I digress. Let me know in the comments how you feel about that. Like I said, I wasn't a big fan of that part, but because the story focused more on her revenge and her learning to relearn her life and her taking on challenges and obstacles with these side jobs, the romance between them was kind of minuscule to me when it came to the story itself. Why I love Kyoko. Kyoko is one of my top 5 female protagonists, and this is because I admire female protagonists who don't let characters walk all over them, and instead stand up for themselves. Kyoko is an absolute sweetheart, and she is willing to sacrifice anything for those she loves and cares about. And it doesn't take long for her to warm up to those around her, even attempting to see things from their own perspective. This anime was so unique for me because I expected her to just let Sho say whatever he wanted, but she stood up for herself and made an effort to change her life. And I like the spunkiness that she had. She's also funny and devious, and I just can't help but root for her in whatever she does. She grew up without a loving family or friends, so it was a treat to see her make new friends and a family along the way. Although her motivations for attending LME may have been flawed, it was still fun to watch her discover a new talent that even she was unaware that she had. You can even see her character develop as she began to understand the difficulties that other talents faced in order to do what they did. Some were initially rude to her, but after some time, they all came to respect her and acknowledge that she could be Tokyo's next big thing in a few years. Why I love Skip Beat. When I saw this anime for the first time, I instantly connected with Skip Beat because I grew up in the entertainment world. I put in long hours of practice, staying up late with my fellow actors to memorize lines. I also had rivals who I looked up to, and it became competitive, especially when there were only a few spots to fill in a play or not that many solos in a choir song. We took our work seriously in choir, band, and theater, and anyone outside of those groups never understood how much effort that was required to do those things. But I was blessed to have friends and family who supported me on the sidelines, and they would even stay up with me late at night while I practiced. My mom would even scout out practice locations for me and attend every recital and play I performed in. Skip Beat was like an anime version of what I went through in real life, and it was fun to watch and relate to when I was in high school, and even when I rewatched it when I was in college. And I will always treasure this precious gem. And with that, here is the final version of my Kyoko fan art. I loved how she turned out. If you made it to the end of the video, please let me know if you've seen Skip Beat before and what were your thoughts on the series. I would love to chat with you about that below. If this was your first time hearing about Skip Beat, I hope you give it a chance, and I hope I was able to, give a nice, decent synopsis of the anime. It's a good watch, and I like it because it's short and simple. And I do have a couple of volumes of the manga, and it continues to be a great read even from there. So, all right, loves, please like and subscribe for more. Thank you very much for hanging out with me. I pray that you guys have a blessed day and night. and I will see you in the next video.